Hey, good morning. Okay. You are juror number 3, correct?
Yes, I am.
All right, and we are going to just refer to you by your number. And so the first thing I'm going to do is swear you in, so make sure that all your questions are answered under oath. So if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now, we want to make sure that you speak right into the microphone so that we can hear your voice. And also, we tend to, in jury selection, get into kind of a conversational tone. And so you'll have a tendency to, like, interrupt the questions with affirmation, like, mm-hmm, or to answer with, uh-huh, mm-hmm. We can't really do that because our court reporter needs yes and no answers. And also, you cannot talk over each other. So it happens because, like I say, it becomes kind of a conversation. In normal conversation, we do interrupt each other, talk over each other. But let's try and avoid that if we can in this case. So you filled out a questionnaire. And the first question I have is there anything you wanted to add or modify? Because sometimes people fill out the questionnaire, and then in reflection, they realize there was something they probably should have put in there. Is there anything that comes to mind regarding that?
Not off the top of my head. It was a while ago, and I think I filled it out to the best of my ability at the time, and I don't know that that's changed.
Okay. If, one of the attorneys is questioning you, you do have something that comes to mind, you'll feel free to offer that. Now, you're not supposed to read any articles, and you're supposed to avoid media about this case, and that's what it said in the questionnaire. Since the questionnaire has advised you to avoid any media coverage of this, have you inadvertently been exposed to any media? And by that I mean, it's not your fault if you see a headline, mm-hmm. or maybe somebody talks to you about it, says, "Oh, did you hear?" And
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Is there anything like that that has happened since the questionnaire? And now, as you sit here in court?
A couple of headlines, and to be super specific, Instagram stories that have been shared or Instagram posts that have been shared, but they're all fairly high level, not anywhere near like the depth of an article.
Okay, do they talk at all about the substance of the case or the procedures or the participants, anything like that?
Not particularly. I've seen the charges that are being brought at a high level, no further than what their titles are, I suppose. And then...
Pretty much what I said today?
Yeah, exactly. And then additional information about kind of the timeline of the case, so when jury selection was beginning, when the actual proceedings are going to begin, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Do you think you could put all that aside? Because, as you notice, we asked you, what have you read about or heard about the case? Because we recognize that people have heard about this case.
Mm-hmm.
The question becomes, can you decide the case only on what you hear in the courtroom?
So aside from what I've heard since my questionnaire, am I willing to put the headlines aside?
Everything you've heard before. Because you have to essentially be the blank slate, and
mm-hmm.
It's okay to come in with some knowledge about the case. It's okay to even have opinions. It's even okay to have strong opinions about the case. But as a juror, you have to put all that aside. Some people will say, no, I can't do that. I've got these very strong opinions. I cannot put them aside. I cannot be, and very honestly, say they can't be fair and impartial. Some people, even with strong opinions, can say, I understand my role, and I feel I have the self-discipline to be able to do that, to put aside what I've heard before, decide just what we hear in court, and to follow the law, which obviously comes from the court.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you could do that?
I definitely fall into the bucket of strong opinions.
Okay, and I noticed that on your questionnaire.
Yeah,
there were some.
Definitely have strong opinions about the case. I think I could try to be impartial. I don't know that I can promise impartiality just based on my opinions and personal experiences. I don't know that that could be promised.
Okay. And I appreciate that's a very honest answer. And we put you in a tough spot because we say, you know something about the case, but even what you know we're asking you to put aside. And to some extent, can a bell be unrung? Mm-hmm, all those kind of concepts. and we put you in a tough spot and say, now tell us whether you could be fair and impartial.
Mm-hmm.
We recognize that that's a tough spot to put you in. But we actually, you know yourself better than any of us. Do you think when it comes right down to it that you could do it?
I don't think so.
Okay. And tell me a little bit more about that.
I think in this case, there's very clear action that was taken, and I think regardless of what kind of dress you put the action in, it happened. And so regardless of what charges are brought or what evidence is brought, I think there's already too much that has happened and too much that is just cold, hard fact that cannot be ignored.
Okay. So let me put it one last way. As a juror, you can't be hoping or yearning for a certain result over another. And because if you are, either way, you shouldn't be a juror because that's not being impartial. And it's not a character flaw, it's just, based on what you've seen and heard. And that's
Understood.
Yeah. So do you think that's still the case, that you probably...
Yeah, I think I definitely hope for a specific outcome, and I don't know that that would change.
Okay. Any inquiry from the defense? Well, let me just see if the defense or the state has any inquiry. You may.
Only as to this issue?
Only on this issue, please.
Yes, sir. Morning.
Good morning.
Juror number 3. Would you agree that there are two sides to every story?
Yes.
And if you were called upon to be a juror in this case, you would have to decide and be able to promise the judge that whatever opinions that you may have formed, whatever you believe may be the case, you would have to put that aside and decide the case based solely on the facts that are before you. And that's just how the legal system works. Do you understand that?
Understood.
And oftentimes people come into this courtroom, they have disputes about what happened, and you can have some sort of preconceived notion about the way you think it ought to come out or what maybe actually happened. Would that be fair?
Yes.
But would you also agree that it's really not until you hear all of the evidence and see everything for your own eyes and have people put that into context for you that you really know and can make a decision one way or the other?
I think that's fair. I think at this point it would be interesting to understand how the evidence is different than what has already been kind of played out in the news and media coverage of everything that's conspired since late May last year. I think it would definitely sound and feel different in a courtroom just based on different people giving you the evidence, different motivations, but I think a lot of it has already been exposed, if you will, and so hearing it a second time or in a different way, I don't know if that would change.
Would you agree that you would need to hear everything that happened before you could finally decide a case, though?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And so when we talk about some of the media that you've been exposed to, I think you said that there's some Instagram stories that have been shared, right? Probably saw some things on the news, the video footage, correct? And when you're looking at these bites on the news, fair to say this happens in 30-second to 60-second increments?
Correct.
And I believe the judge instructed everyone that they could expect to anticipate this trial after it begins to last somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 weeks, right? And so if there's the ability to fill up 4 weeks with evidence, that's significantly longer than probably what you've been exposed to in the news. Would you agree?
I would agree.
And so just knowing that, knowing how much more is out there, how many more witnesses they are to hear from, how, all of the testimony that could comprise a case, would you at least acknowledge that, maybe you haven't heard everything to this point?
I would agree that I have not heard everything. However, are there repeated stories, I guess, from folks? Are things really that novel that people are saying? I guess I would not debate that, but be interested to see how kind of novel the hundreds of witnesses' recollections actually are, or if it'll just be kind of repetitive.
So there'd be two parts to the trial, right? There's what happened, and that would come from the witnesses who would testify, the evidence you would see. And then there's, well, what does it mean? And that would come from whatever the judge instructs you that it means, right? These are the elements of the different crimes charged, and you'd have to take a look at those and try to decide whether the facts that were presented fit these elements. And of all the coverage that you've heard, I'm assuming you've heard nothing in terms of, you know, what the law actually is. Fair?
That's fair. I guess I know the difference between, don't quiz me, but I know tentatively the difference between second degree and third degree murder.
Okay. I won't quiz you.
Okay, amazing.
All right, and I appreciate your candor here today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Juror number 3, I'm going to excuse you from this case, so you don't have to serve on it. I appreciate your candor, and I don't want you to feel that you have not done your duty. Your duty was to tell us the truth and be candid in this case. So we do appreciate everything, the work you put into the questionnaire, and your willingness to answer questions today. So you can go with the deputy, and we'll proceed at that. You'll have to leave the letter with the deputy once you leave with him. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Greg, grab him in the hallway and say, hold off a minute. All right, that was the court's excusing juror number 3 for cause. One thing I was trying to convey when juror number 2 was coming in, I think you may have noticed there are certain people who, if you follow up too closely to what's in their questionnaire about their background, for example, there was one who was had a job title that person was easy to find on the internet, and if we talk about that in open court, I'd like it to be generalities to protect their anonymity. In fact, there might be a couple like that from what I've seen. So just to keep that in mind about try and stay as general as possible to protect the anonymity of the jurors. With that, I think we can go to number 4.